There are some scary stories with the sound of rain and ASMR relaxing voice. Let's start. Forest Officer Arjun Mehra had been transferred to a remote forest division known as Dandaka Reserve, a place surrounded by thick wilderness, barely touched by civilization. The locals called it Whispering Pines. Strange name, Arjun thought, but what unsettled him more was the fact that no officer had lasted more than a few months here. They either quit, fell ill, or simply disappeared. The forest department dismissed the rumors as superstition, but whispers among villagers told a different story. They spoke of moving shadows, trees that whispered, and a presence that watched from deep within the forest. Despite all this, Arjun wasn't the type to be scared easily. He was a practical man, an ex-soldier turned ranger. With his rifle, compass, and a sturdy jeep, he was confident he could handle anything nature had to offer. On his first night in the forest outpost, Arjun heard soft tapping on his cabin walls. He assumed it was a tree branch, but when he checked, there were no trees close enough. The sound stopped the moment he stepped outside and returned as soon as he shut the door again. The forest was unnaturally silent. No crickets, no owls, just stillness. The next morning, he discovered footprints around his cabin, bare human feet, small, almost childlike, but they led nowhere, just circled the house and vanished. Determined to find the source of the disturbances, Arjun decided to patrol deeper into the forest. The old map showed a watchtower built decades ago, deep in the heart of the woods. No one had used it in years, but he thought it might offer a better vantage point. The deeper he drove, the darker the forest became. The trees here grew unnaturally tall, their branches twisted like gnarled fingers. The sunlight barely touched the forest floor. After hours of driving, the jeep suddenly stalled. Dead. He tried to restart it. Nothing. He checked the fuel, the battery, the wires. Everything looked fine. It just wouldn't start. That's when he saw the first figure, a woman, pale skin, long black hair that covered her face. She stood between the trees, staring at him. Arjun called out, thinking she might be a lost villager. But she didn't move. Instead, she slowly raised her hand and pointed, not at him, but behind him. He turned. No one was there. When he looked back, the woman was gone. With no other option, Arjun walked toward the old watchtower. The path was barely visible, covered in moss and fallen leaves. As he walked, he heard voices, faint whispers calling his name. Arjun, Arjun. He spun around. No one. When he reached the tower, it was falling apart. Vines covered the wooden frame. The door hung loosely on its hinges. But the moment he stepped inside, the whispering stopped. On the walls inside, someone had scratched words with nails. The forest is alive. Don't look back. It feeds on fear. Then he noticed the drawings. Dozens of them. Stick figures. A man surrounded by black trees. A face with no eyes. A creature with antlers and a wide, toothy grin. Suddenly, a loud snap came from below. Something was climbing the stairs. Arjun aimed his rifle at the stairwell, but nothing came up. Then, from behind him, a voice whispered directly into his ear. You shouldn't have come here. He turned, but saw only the empty room. The next thing Arjun remembered was waking up on the forest floor, covered in mud and leaves. It was daytime again, but he had no idea how long he'd been unconscious. His phone showed no signal. His watch had stopped. The jeep was gone. And worst of all, He was completely lost everywhere he turned. The forest looked the same. The trees seemed to move, rearranging themselves. No matter which direction he walked, he always came back to the same clearing, where a massive tree with a hollow trunk stood like a sentinel. From inside that tree, he heard sobbing, childlike, weak, terrified. He peered into the hollow. It was deep, pitch black. Then the sobbing stopped, and a hand reached out, grabbing his wrist. He screamed, yanking his arm free. The hand was ice cold, with the skin that felt like damp leather. He ran. Branches slashed at him. The forest howled. He was no longer in nature. He was in something alive, something that didn't want him to leave. Days passed, or maybe weeks. Time had no meaning in the forest anymore. He came across diaries of previous forest officers, hidden under rocks, buried in trees. All told the same story. Trapped, haunted, hunted. One wrote, "There is no way out. The forest decides who stays. It shows you what you fear, feeds on your memories. I saw my dead wife. I saw my own body hanging from a tree. This place is not a forest. It's a mouth." Arjun realized what he had to do. He returned to the hollow tree, the one that sobbed. He lit a fire around it, poured the last of his fuel. The tree screamed, a sound not of wood cracking, but of something living in pain. The forest roared in rage. The wind howled like voices shrieking in agony. And then, silence. He woke up on a hospital bed. A rescue team had found him unconscious near the forest's edge, days after his last radio contact. His jeep was still in working condition, miles away from where he'd been found. They told him he had been missing for 3 weeks. When he asked about the old watchtower, the officials said it was never built. It didn't exist on any record. He showed them the diaries he had found, but they were now just blank pages, soggy and moldy. They said he had hallucinated, stress, isolation. He needed rest. But Arjun knew the truth. That night in his hospital room, he heard the whisper again, faint, from the trees outside the window. "Arjun, you never left." Next story. Ravi was a night cab driver, one of the few brave enough to take fares along the remote forest highway, connecting the small towns of Devgar and Nalpur. The road was poorly lit, flanked by thick ancient woods. It had a reputation for strange sightings. Local folklore was rich with stories. Ghost brides, faceless men, disappearing travelers. But Ravi didn't buy any of it. To him, ghosts were good for business. People paid extra to be driven through the haunted stretch. Sometimes kids would challenge each other to ride alone in the back seat, just to prove they weren't afraid. Ravi played along, chuckled, even added fake ghost noises for fun. It was just trees and darkness. Until that one night, part 2, the first fare. It was 1:47 a.m. Ravi had just dropped off a couple near Nalpur and was headed back empty when his cab meter beeped, a signal from his app. A new fare. Strange, he thought. There was no signal in this part of the road. The pickup was from Old Crossway Point, a long-abandoned milestone deep in the forest stretch. Hesitant but curious, Ravi accepted it. As he approached, fog crept across the road like spilled milk. His headlights barely pierced it. That's when he saw her, a woman in a white saree, barefoot, hair wet as if she had just stepped out of a river, stood on the side of the road. She wasn't waving, wasn't looking, just standing, staring straight into the forest. Ravi stopped. She slowly turned, opened the back door, and sat without saying a word. "Where to, madam?" Ravi asked, trying not to sound nervous. Her voice was dry, almost like wind rustling through dead leaves. "Just drive. I'll tell you when to stop." Part 3. The Road to Nowhere. They drove in silence. The fog thickened, and the forest outside seemed alive, twisting and moving. Ravi tried glancing at her through the mirror, but the back seat was somehow darker than the rest of the car. Even with the dome light on, her face remained in shadow. Then his radio crackled. It was off. A whisper came through the speakers. "Turn back." He froze. "What the hell?" he muttered, turning the knobs, trying to kill the static. She leaned forward, her breath ice cold against his neck. "Don't listen to them." Ravi's heart pounded. He kept driving. Every now and then, the trees along the roadside would flicker, revealing strange shapes, faces peering from the bark, hands reaching from behind trunks. A child standing motionless on the side of the road with hollow eyes. But every time he blinked, they were gone. Part 4. The village that shouldn't exist. After what felt like hours, the woman finally spoke. "Stop. We're here." Ravi looked out. They had arrived at a village he'd never seen on any map. The houses were old, made of rotting wood. Their roofs caved in. No lights, no people, no animals. Just fog and silence. She got out and walked toward one of the houses. Something about this place felt wrong, like it had been abandoned for centuries. Yet the soil was freshly disturbed, as if something had recently been buried. Ravi waited. Minutes passed. Then he heard it, screaming, high-pitched, inhuman wailing, coming from the house she had entered. Ravi jumped out of the cab, heart pounding, and ran toward it. The front door creaked open on its own. Inside, the walls were covered in symbols, drawn in what looked like blood. Candles burned upside down. In the center of the room, a hole had been dug, a deep pit. Ravi looked in and saw her. She was at the bottom of the pit, dead. Her eyes were open, unblinking, skin rotted, her white sari torn and filthy. He stumbled back. He couldn't breathe. He turned to run and crashed into her, alive, standing behind him. "Why did you leave me there?" she hissed, eyes glowing red. "You were supposed to help me." She lunged at him. Part 5. The Escape. Ravi woke up in his cab, alone. The sun was rising. Had it been a dream? No. His hands were covered in mud. The tires of his cab were caked in dirt. His dashboard had scratch marks. And in the back seat lay a strand of long, wet black hair. He sped away, never taking a fare through that forest again. But it didn't matter, because now, every night at exactly 1:47 a.m., his meter beeps. And no matter where he is, the pickup location is always the same. Old Crossway Point. He stopped accepting it. He changed phones, switched companies, moved to another city. But still, every night, the beep returns. And sometimes, when he's alone in his cab late at night, he smells river water and hears a voice from the back seat. "Just drive. I'll tell you when to stop." The third, next story, about the night guard of Black Hollow Lodge. The Black Hollow Lodge sat deep within the forest, far from any town or road, perched on the edge of a forgotten mountain trail. The trees surrounding it were ancient, gnarled things, with twisted limbs that clawed at the windows when the wind howled. No one ever came to Black Hollow by accident. Only those with a purpose ever made the journey. Junaid had been working the night shift there for only 3 weeks. He'd been told the job would be simple. Stay up, watch the monitors, and make rounds every 2 hours. The lodge had few guests, especially this time of year. October, cold and crawling into the darker days of winter. Most nights the hotel sat empty, except for a few staff and the manager, Mr. Kadir, who slept in the upstairs suite. For the first few nights, Junaid liked the quiet. After years of noisy city jobs, this was peaceful. The crackle of the fireplace in the lobby, the sound of owls outside, and the whispering wind made it easy to drift into short naps between rounds. But as the second week rolled in, the peace started to feel unnatural. It began with the cameras one night, while sipping his third cup of chai and staring at the glowing screens. He saw something move in the hallway near room 203. It was quick, like someone darting past. But there were no guests that night. He checked the booking sheet 3 times. Only he, Mr. Kadir, and the cleaner, Shazia, were in the building. He grabbed his flashlight and crept up the stairs, footsteps echoing in the narrow hall. The light flickered as he approached room 203, the air suddenly cold. He knocked. No answer. He opened the door with his master key. The room was empty, impeccably clean. Yet, the closet door creaked slowly shut just as he entered. He yanked it open, nothing inside but the lingering scent of damp wood and something else, like iron, like blood. He shook it off. Must be imagining things. But the next night it happened again. On the cameras, room 203's door opened on its own and slowly shut. Then, he watched as the bed covers moved, gently at first, as if someone were slipping under them. But no one was there. Still, when he went upstairs, the room was empty again. He started to feel watched. On the third night he heard whispers, faint like a child muttering from the end of a long hallway. He followed the sound down into the basement, an old storage room filled with cobweb-covered furniture and crates from decades ago. The air was thick with mildew, but underneath it was that same iron scent. As he scanned the room with his flashlight, the bulb flickered. The whispers stopped. And then, something moved in the corner. He saw the outline of a person, crouched and twitching. A low sound came from it, like a gurgle trying to form words. He dropped the flashlight. By the time he picked it up again, the thing was gone. Only the damp floor remained, scratched with what looked like claw marks and Arabic letters smeared into the dust. He didn't tell anyone, not even when he started waking up in the security chair with scratches on his arms. Not even when he found his flashlight on the ground in places he didn't remember going. Not even when he saw his own face on the cameras, standing in hallways he hadn't entered, walking slowly from room to room, staring into empty beds. Mr. Kadir didn't help either. When Junaid finally tried to report it, the manager simply said, "You're not the first night guard, you know." Then he locked his office door and didn't speak to Junaid again. One night, the cameras all went dark, except for the one facing the front desk. On that screen, Junaid saw himself, sitting, staring at the monitor. Behind him, the closet door opened slowly. Something pale and thin emerged, crawling toward him. He turned around in real life. Nothing there, but the camera still showed it getting closer. The thing looked like a woman, or something that once was a woman. Her skin was gray and stretched like plastic. Her eyes were sunken holes, and her mouth, it kept opening, wider and wider. He unplugged the monitors. But even in darkness, he could feel her breath on the back of his neck. The last night was the worst. He woke up standing in the woods behind the hotel, barefoot, the trees whispering his name. His radio crackled with the static, and through it came a voice that sounded like his own. "Come back inside." He did. The lobby was dark. The lights no longer worked. The paintings on the walls had melted into grotesque smears of faces, eyes, wide mouths, all screaming. The rooms were all open now, every door, and from each room something stared out. Not guests, not people. He ran, but the hallways kept stretching. The stairs led nowhere. Mirrors showed things moving behind him, but when he turned, it was just air. He reached the front door and tried to open it. It was bricked shut, like it had never been a door at all. And then he heard it again, his own voice whispering, "You're not the guard anymore. You're the guest." He was never found. A month later, a new guard came. They told him the same thing. "Quiet job. Just watch the cameras. Make the rounds." He took his first nap around 2 a.m. And somewhere in the back room of the camera feed, Junaid's face flickered across the screen, standing in the shadows, waiting. Guys, please let me know how you like my voice by commenting, and also subscribe to my channel so that I can tell you more stories like this. Thank you so much for watching.